Japanese has a raising to object RTO construction like 1b, where the subject of the complement clause of an epistemic verb is accusative marked. And Japanese allows wrong scrambling, I mean scrambling out of an embedded clause too, as shown by 2b. However, long scrambling out of an RTO complement is degraded. Long scrambling can be applied to the embedded dative argument in 1a, and this derives 3a. In contrast, 3b, embedded dative argument in an RTO complement has undergone long scrambling is less acceptable than 1ab and 3a. So 3b, 日本の歴史にジョンはデイビッドを詳しいと思った。This is less acceptable than 1ab and 3a. So raising to object interferes with long scrambling. The acceptability of 3b can be improved if the accusative subject is shifted into the matrix domain. For A, and if the accusative subject follows the matrix adverbial is as degraded as 3b. In contrast, in 4b, the accusative subject is shifted across the matrix adverbial, and this shifting results in improvement of the acceptability. 4b, 日本の歴史にジョンはデイビッドをこのそこから詳しいと思った。This is more acceptable than 3b and 4a. This paper offers a principled explanation for the unacceptability of 3b and the contrast between 3b and 4b. Now, let's move on to section 2. Section 2 introduces the two theoretical assumptions that are necessary, that are relevant to my discussion. First, I adapt the condition 5 on extraction from phases. 5. Where more than one element is located at the phasal edge, only the highest or outermost edge is the edge for the purpose of the phase impenetrability condition, PIC. Consider 6. HP in 6 is intended to be a phase, and X and Y are the outer and the inner specifiers of H. 5 allows the extraction of X, the outermost specifier of H, as in 6b, but it prohibits extraction of Y, the inner specifier over X, as in 6c. I assume that the trace does not count as an edge. So suppose that the element at the highest edge is extracted, as in 7a, then the element in the second highest edge counts as the edge and can be extracted, as in 7b. Second, I assume the so-called tacking ring analysis of the multiple specifiers of a single head that is proposed by Richards 1998. Please look at 8. In 8a, both YP and ZP can be attracted by X, and YP is closer to X than ZP. And in this case, YP is moved first because of attract closest. And then ZP is moved, and when ZP is moved, it is moved to the inner spec X, as in HC, because the inner spec X is closer to the original position of ZP than the outer spec X. Now, section 3. I assume that in the RTO construction in Japanese, the raised accusative subject is moved to the embedded spec C, as depicted in 9. Accusative case on the embedded subject is assigned by the matrix small v if case is assigned by a function category, or through the interaction with the matrix subject if the dependent case theory is adopted. Whichever theory of case is adopted, the accusative subject must be located in a position that is accessible from the matrix small v or the matrix subject. On the assumption that CP is a phase, this point can be captured if the embedded subject is moved to the embedded spec C, where it is accessible from the upper clause. I would like to skip the discussions of 10 and 11, and please look at 12. As shown by 12, the raised subject can precede a matrix adverbial. I assume that the accusative subject in spec C is optionally moved into the matrix domain. I suppose that this is an instance of VP internal scrambling in the sense of Takano 1998. And its landing site is what this can be spec Raj V. I propose that this movement cannot be string virtuous. It is applied only when it affects the linear order. Now, section 4. This section explains the unacceptability of 3b and the contrast between 3b and 4b, taking their derivations into consideration. The derivation of 3b is shown in 14a to g. First of all, the embedded adjectival phrase is formed. A is merged with its dative PP complement. AP is merged with the right adjective small a, the adjectival counterpart of the right word small v. The embedded subject is merged with the specifier of small a, as in 14a. I assume that small ap is a phase category, just like small vp is, although nothing hinges on this assumption. In order to escape the domain of small a, the pp complement of a is moved to the inner spec a, spec small a, as in 14b. And the small ap in 14b is merged with t, and tp is merged with the embedded c, as in 14c. I assume that the embedded t in the RTO construction does not have the EPP feature, although nothing hinges on this assumption. The subject and the PP must move to the edges of CP, the former for the case reason, the latter for the PIC-based locality reason. Since the subject asymmetrically sequence the PP, the subject is closer to CP than the PP. The subject is moved first, as in 14D, and the PP is moved to the inner specifier, as in 14E. In 14E, the subject is located in the outer spec C, and the element to be scrambled, I mean PP, is located in the inner spec C. CP in 14E is merged with the matrix V, and VP is merged with small v. The matrix subject is merged with the specifier of small v, as in 14F. In order to later move to the initial position of the matrix growth, the PP in the inner spec C must move to one of the edges of the matrix small vp due to the PIC. Importantly, it cannot be, because it is not the outermost edge of the CP, as depicted in 14G. For this reason, the PP cannot move out of the embedded CP, so it cannot be long scrambled. This is the reason for the unacceptability of the example 3b. The same analysis can be applied to 4a, in which a matrix adverbial occurs, but the accusative embedded subject is not shifted into the matrix growth. And long scrambling in 3a is possible because the embedded subject is nominative marked and is not moved to spec C, so it does not interfere with long scrambling. Because the unacceptability of 3b is attributed to the embedded subject occupying the outer spec C, it is predicted that if the embedded subject in 14G is extracted, the PP in the inner spec C can be extracted too. This is what 4b shows. The derivation of 4b is shown in 15a to d. Like in 14, the embedded subject is moved first, and the PP is moved to the inner spec C, as in 15a. Then the embedded subject is moved to spec V in the matrix growth by VP internal scrambling, as in 15b. Because the embedded subject has been extracted, the PP in the inner spec C can now count as the edge of the embedded CP and can thus be moved to the inner spec small v in the matrix growth. After T is merged with small vp, the matrix subject in the outer spec small v is raised to spec T because of the EPP. Because the matrix subject has been extracted, the PP in the inner spec small b can be moved to spec C, which I assume is the landing site of long scrambling, as in 15D. And the adverbial is inserted by late merge as the adjunct of VVAR. Importantly, the movement of the embedded subject from the outer spec C enables the subsequent extraction of PP in the inner spec C. And this is the reason for the acceptability or improved acceptability of the example 4b. Here, I would like to return to 3b and 4a. If the accusative subject in 3b and 4a were moved from the outer spec C in a string vacuous fashion, 3b and 4a would be incorrectly predicted to be grammatical. This is the reason why I proposed above that the movement of the accusative subject to the matrix small v cannot be string vacuous. Now, let me skip the rest of this section and let's move on to section 5, concluding remarks. The proposed analysis has the following implications. First, it offers an additional piece of evidence for 5. Second, it offers an additional piece of evidence that the raised accusative subject is moved to spec C. If the accusative subject were not moved to spec C, it would be a mystery why it interferes with wrong scrambling. Third, it offers a piece of evidence for the successive cyclicity of wrong scrambling. The accusative subject in the RTU construction occupies the R2 mass spec C and it interferes with wrong scrambling across itself. This point shows that wrong scrambling heads for the outermost edge of an intermediate phase and is thus can be said to be successive cyclic. Thank you very much.